Hello, everybody. Thank you very much to join us for one of the most interesting panel of Unstable Summit, Stablecoins Go Cross-Chain. I'm very happy after different events around the world to go back one of the most interesting initiative phenomena in DeFi, decentralized finance, clearly cross-chain. Cross-chain is a revolutionary concept and technology. My name is Xavier Gomez. I was a former banker for Credit Suisse in algorithmic trading. I moved on the dark side of entrepreneurship and co-founded my fintech in data analytics in Web3. And also, I'm deeper influencer in Web3 in France, in Europe, for regulatory framework. Let me quickly introduce each of the panelists. Could you start?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Can you hear me?
No.
How about now?
It's all turn. Yeah.
There's hello. Hello.
Is
None of them are on?
Like go down and up again.
Okay.
Very complicated.
it open?
I think so. It should be on now. No? Just use this one. Okay.
Thank you, guys. My name is Irene. I am head of strategy at Layer Zero Labs, and Layer Zero Labs is the creator of Layer Zero, the leading omni-chain interoperability protocol, and also Stargate Finance, which is the most widely used native asset bridge. Briefly on Layer Zero, the way we designed and architected the protocol was informed by 3 key design principles. For us, those are immutability, permissionlessness, and censorship resistance. And our view is that we're less, if anything, maybe not opinionated at all on the validation layer and much more interested in the transport layer. And so many of the bridges that currently exist or messaging protocols can fit right in as other elements of the validation layer using the Layer Zero framework. And this is a great topic, so I'm excited to be with these 2 panelists.
Thank you, Lauren. Sam?
Yes, hello everybody. So I'm Sam McPherson. I'm co-founder of Phoenix Labs, and we're a smart contract dev shop actively contributing to building Spark protocol. Our flagship product right now, Sparkland, has been gaining a lot of traction recently. We just launched 6 months ago, and recently, yesterday, 2 days ago, we just crossed 1 billion in TVL, which is pretty exciting. So previously, I worked on the core engineering team at MakerDAO. I've been part of the DAI Maker ecosystem for, I mean, it feels like a long time, but it's only 3 years. Relatively new, I guess. But yeah, so that's about me.
Susanna, please.
Hi, I'm Susanna. I'm the product lead for the IBC team at the Interchain Foundation. And IBC stands for Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. It's a general communication protocol for state machines to interoperate with each other. It doesn't matter what kind of state machine wants to interoperate, but the first use case has been within the Cosmos ecosystem, where it's used with over 100 chains. We've modularized our abstraction layers. So we have the state layer, the transport layer, and the application layer. And we're also unopinionated about what kind of client type you want to use. But if you want a trust minimized approach, use light clients. And then our standardized transport layer means that any application that plugs into the protocol has exactly the same format for delivering messages between chains. So yeah, it's really just a generic protocol for moving information from one chain to another.
Thank you to all of us. Let's start. I think, again, Cross-Chain is one of most interesting part of our business currently. We will try to see how stablecoin and Cross-Chain cover most of the current subject at the moment in terms of risk management, ensuring transaction. And my first question should, how those user experience differ for stablecoin on layer 1 versus layer 2? Because now we are a small battle with layer 1 and layer 2. Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can maybe start with that. So like I'm more from the application layer of stablecoin versus my two other panelists more like infrastructure. So yeah, I mean, we've been thinking about this for a long time now about how to bring DAI multi-chain. So way back, when right before the roll-ups were launching Optimism and Arbitrum, the team I was on was responsible for building the DAI bridge, and you know, a lot of the fancy features that we take for granted now, all this bridging tech and stuff like that. This was all in its infancy / like not even existing. So like we really had to like dig into the details about the roll-ups and the bridging and stuff like that. So we were rushing. Well, not rushing. We did it safely. We were on time to get the bridge out for Optimism, and this was it wasn't the first instance of a cross-chain DAI, but it was the first one that was officially developed by MakerDAO. And for this, we used the native bridge. So one of the things we wanted to keep intact there was the ability to mint on L2 to preserve fungibility with the DAI token as much as possible on L1 and kind of bring it under the, I don't know how official you can get, but bring it under the officiality of the DAO to a certain degree. Because we felt this would be beneficial in the long run for users to be able to just use DAI without thinking about it. Because we feel the multi-chain future is going to be very much that users, like, they don't care. Like right now we have these drop downs like, are you on this chain? Are you on this chain? But that appears to be temporary. It should be temporary. And in the long run, everything should just work and be seamless. So in order to make that, you have these trade-offs between security of the various roll-ups you are deploying onto, as well as the fungibility with the token. So straddling this line between the two is a very difficult thing to do, and we've been actively researching that even to this day. So yeah, these are the questions. It's very simple when you're just on mainnet. DAI is DAI, but once you go to other chains, there's various flavors of DAI all over the place. So how to reconcile that is an ongoing challenge.
Susanna, Irene, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I've actually forgotten what the original question was, but talking about the difference between stablecoins on layer 2 and layer 1. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I do think fungibility is, like, from a UX perspective, clearly a concern, but I think it's actually kind of a security feature as well, because if you had fungibility between all these different representations of DAI that got to the layer 2 in different ways, then kind of your basket DAI is only as weak. It's only as strong as the weakest link that was used to introduce more assets into that kind of basket representation of DAI. So as much as it, like, creates these challenges, it's actually, like, to the benefit of a user for not just, like, bundling everything into one thing and considering everything to have exactly the same risk profile.
I think the two things that come to mind are, one, there's different amounts of liquidity for stablecoins on certain layer 1s and layer 2s. And then the horizontal composability, meaning moving stablecoins from an L2 to another L2 or from an L2 to an L1 is very difficult right now with traditional stablecoins. You may have to go through a native bridge and wait for the 7-day bridge back period to then go to another L2. And what we found at layer 0 is actually the most high volume pathways, or The most used routes for moving stablecoins is from Arbitrum to Optimism and Optimism to Arbitrum, leveraging Stargate, which is built on top of Layer 0. So the desire to use your stablecoins on different L2s and move them quickly and cheaply between them is incredibly high across most DeFi users.
And maybe can you share some lessons learned from building a stablecoin on layer 1 versus layer 2?
Yeah, so I joined Maker after MCD launch, so I can't talk too much about getting it started on layer 1. But on layer 2, I was pretty actively involved in that effort. And yeah, we can go back through some history, I guess. What was this that Optimism launched? That was 2021 summer, I believe. So we were looking at this at the beginning of the year. And we had many sessions figuring out the best way to bring DAI to Optimism. We had looked, there were the best examples of DAI on other chains before that was probably like Polygon POS. DAI is kind of everywhere, but we saw there's many different flavors of it showing up on all these chains because of all these bridging solutions. So you'd have like DAI that was like bridged to like one other chain, and then it was like bridged then to another chain, but then you'd have like another DAI that was like bridged directly to from Ethereum like through another bridging solution. So you get all these variants, and clearly this won't scale. It's like unsustainable. It's just not the way to go. But it was like people were just charging ahead because users want to use DAI, and so you got DAI. But we had a lot of lessons learned over the past 2 years with all these bridge hacks. Bridging is not trivial. It's like probably one of the most complex subjects in crypto, like securely bridging assets. So we looked long and hard at this in 2021 beginning and preparing for the roll-up launches that were coming in the summer. So Optimism was the first to launch. We were able to deliver a customized bridge version of DAI that used our own custom bridge. We needed this to have Maker governance control over the L2 side so that we could attach upgrades. This is compared to the standard token bridge that normally tokens are just bridged over this, but then you lose minting rights on the L2. So there's this kind of trade-off, but the team at Maker wasn't particularly big, and we had like everybody and their grandmother launching roll-ups very rapidly and chains and stuff like that over the next few months and years. So we were able to hit the launch date of Optimism, which was great. We were included in a lot of the DeFi products. We missed the launch window for Arbitrum due to it's smart contract development. So if we haven't got the audits in place, like we won't go. It's like it's that simple. So for Arbitrum, we actually missed the launch window by a week, which was like pretty disastrous. We were actually excluded from the Curve launched their 3-pool variant, but because DAI wasn't launched at that time, they were just used USDC and Tether. And then we missed this whole demand sync we could have had on L2. So hitting the launch windows was very important. So later on, we pivoted. We started using recommending using the standard token bridge. We lose the minting rights, but we were looking at ways to get around this later on. I don't know how much you guys want me to continue rambling on about this, but yeah, this is sort of the history and some of the experiences we've had with Maker, but I'll let you guys go.
Well, I think one of the observations from hearing the saga that Maker had is that the traditional route of doing these sort of like isolated deployments or one by one expanding to different chains is very challenging, and it creates these time constraints. And for like Circle for a very long time, there was and still is a long queue of different chains that want native USDC there, and it takes a long time to deploy it. And then, of course, you mentioned bridge hacks. For 2022, the primary loss, I guess, mechanism across all of crypto were bridge hacks. And these kinds of bridges are wrapped asset bridges or smart contract token bridges. And that means that users are locking their value inside these contracts that are owned by a third party. Those smart contracts are custodying their assets and minting a synthetic one or an IOU, saying, only when you cross it back this way and trust us, we will keep your real assets safe, will you get the real deal. And now we are in 2023. It's not a question anymore of if the future is multi-chain. The present is very much multi-chain. There are tens and 20s of L2s, many well-funded alt L1s. And if you're going to be launching a stablecoin, you want it to be able to go on many chains live and be native quickly without having to custody in some third-party bridge. You want to maintain your minting and burning rights, for example, be able to set rate limits, all of these really important aspects of launching a stablecoin on many chains. So it's different today, for sure. And we'll get into some examples of cross-chain stablecoins and what they've done well and what they haven't. And I think that we're actually getting really, really close to a version of a stablecoin that is easy to use across maybe 100 different chains.
It's funny because you say the world become multi-chain, but we have a debate between multi-chain versus cross-chain. What should be more or less the trend or the future? Because as you mentioned, during 2020, it was a little bit challenging, but now with all innovation and technology, maybe we can make the same thing, but less expensive with more capacity. And have you got an opinion, multi-chain versus cross-chain?
We define, or I think about multi-chain as, if a protocol is multi-chain, there are isolated instances of the protocol deployed on each of these chains, and cross-chain is an actual passage of information and value transfer, syncing of state, for example, across all of these, meaning you can now lend on one chain and borrow on 3 others, rather than simply, say, like using Spark on Ethereum and then using Spark on Gnosis. Not to say that that's how you guys are designed, but as an example.
Yeah.
I think pretty much the vast majority of apps you see on Ethereum and layer 2s are kind of still in the multi-chain paradigm now. Kind of the standard business model for launching your layer 2 is you get quite a lot of existing applications that were on layer 1 to then redeploy on your roll-up. There are some emerging newer use cases, I don't know, you see some gaming applications which just can't really operate on layer 1 because they're too kind of gas intensive. Things like this crop up, but it's still the vast majority of instances I think are very much multi-chain. And I think it's having all of these different bridging implementations makes it genuinely difficult to have a cross-chain application, because if you want something genuinely cross-chain, in an ideal scenario, having to add in some additional trust assumptions to your application then kind of begs the question, why did you bother building your application on the blockchain in the first place if you're prepared to then just trust another party? So I think it's, I agree that there's this aspiration to have a future where no one actually really cares what chain they're operating on. But I think that's still quite a way to go. It's kind of an aspiration, I think, at this point.
Sam?
Yeah, these words are kind of over, lots of hype around them, right? Cross-chain or multi-chain or whatever. For me, I think it's pretty clear at this point, Ethereum specifically will become the settlement layer for financial applications at the very least. I think this has already happened. There's too many network effects. We have L2s, side chains, stuff like that. But that's not to say there can't exist other chains for other use cases. For Cosmos is great. Polygon POS, Avalanche, these are all just chains for different use cases. But yeah, for the use case for finance specifically, yeah, I think it's going to be oriented more and more around Ethereum, just because these things have a tendency to consolidate into one venue.
Now, if we look a little bit risk management consideration, rigid a stablecoin in order to ensure the mass adoption, what are the key risk factors associated with a rigid stablecoin from your point of view?
Well, Susanna made a great point, which is why even bother to build on blockchains if you're going to put your trust in the hands of some third party, especially a service. And I think about a service as some sort of product offering that requires its creator company to maintain the integrity of what you are using. Whereas a true protocol is something that should be evergreen, immutable, can exist within your infrastructure stack, and you can trust that it won't be upgraded or changed on you. Hence why it's important that for infrastructure protocols, you diligence that they're comprised of immutable contracts rather than upgradable contracts. And I think ownership there is the first piece. So if you're launching a stablecoin that is cross-chain, or think about it as omni-chain, chain agnostic, do you own the smart contracts? And if you have to sort of do a lock and mint or a burn and mint, who is able to burn and mint? Is it the underlying infrastructure protocol, or is it your DAO and you as the application developer? I think another thing too is the ability to set rate limits. So at Layer 0, we created a open source reference implementation called the OFT, or the Omnichain Fungible Token Standard, and you can set rate limits, for example. You can also have the ownership of the contracts be your DAO, and because it's not a service, Layer 0 Labs has no ability to mint or burn these OFTs or your token that you may utilize OFT to take cross-chain. So I think those are some important aspects, and a great example of a stablecoin that has implemented cross-chain exceptionally well is actually one of our sponsors today, Angle. They were one of the first to adopt OFT. They created the Euro stablecoin. Pablo, the founder, is incredibly thoughtful and just went into our docs. This was more than a year and a half ago, and was able to integrate Layer 0 so that AG Euro could capture a lot of these really important risk management aspects. And then one more thing on top of that is, because they have integrated Layer 0, they're able to leverage this thing we created called Precrime, which is a proprietary security module. It's what has protected the Stargate token and Stargate protocol since day one, so way back in May of 2022. And how it works is, for every message that goes across mainnet, or the mainnet Layer 0 protocol, it's forked and tested locally against a set of rules or invariants that are defined by the developer. So those invariants could be an algorithm. It could be a set of whitelisted addresses. It could be anything, because you may be building a game that's transacting 5-cent NFTs, and therefore you want to price your security a lot lower than if you're Circle and you're moving USDC in billions of dollars of value. You want to be able to price your security much higher. So that configurability is really important for risk management. And as I said before, any sort of smart contract logic you can do, so you have more controls over minting per pathway, is really important.
Very interesting. Susanna, do you want to add something on risk factor?
Well, I think there's two elements to stablecoin cross-chain risk profiles, right? You've got the cross-chain element and you've got the stablecoin element in itself. Like talking about DAI, it's like a decentralized stablecoin, but then like USDT, USDC are kind of centralized, more opaquely backed stablecoins. Not to say that they don't have reserves and they're not actually backing those the issuance like one-to-one. But you are placing a trust in Circle and Tether as entities that like your stablecoins are actually going to be backed by assets. Whereas with DAI, it's a bit more verifiable. You can see it on chain, like the reserves. So I think there's that risk element, and then the second risk element is if you do want to then send your stablecoin, which was minted in one domain, send it over to another domain. Your choice of how you're gonna make that journey has its own risk elements, right? And there's various degrees of trust you can use in your kind of cross-chain verification. You can just have a single person signing, you can have a committee signing, or you can kind of go to a light client and have a ZK client to even verify, use validity proofs to verify that this state transition was valid. And it's kind of then, where you want to exist on that kind of risk profile is up to the user. At the end of the day, a lot of instances, people seem fine to actually just use a committee-based approach. That's kind of like the status quo of what we see in a lot of places in Ethereum. But I think long term, you are going to be trending towards this kind of light client, zero knowledge proof based model. It's just a lot harder to get there, So with time, hopefully. But yeah.
Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, so these are all very good points, and I think I agree with all of it. Yeah, so for DAI, what we are looking at is, for risk management, is first we need to get maker governance presence on other chains. So we have a governance relay. Once we have that, we give that admin access on the version of DAI that we deploy. And I think the correct, or the best way to go about this is to have what Irene said is this like rate limited, and then you can have multiple bridges that are supported by the token to improve fungibility. However, you set strict rate limits for things that are considered more risky. So, for example, when you have a rollup, the native bridge is the most secure thing you can have because the security of the native bridge is the same as the rollup itself. Mm-hmm. So these risks they overlap entirely. So you would then give minting burning rights on the native bridge some of the highest or even unlimited capacity to mint and burn the token. But then when you want to add you don't want to use the native bridge for user token transfers. It's too slow. So to add a fast path sort of token transfer mechanism, you want to do that, but under a rate limit to give this nice trade-off where the users can get the nice fungibility, but the rate limit protects you in a worst-case scenario where some chain is hacked or something like that. So, yeah, there's just a lot of nuance here, and having the DAO that is expert in this, doing this risk assessment on behalf of the users is very helpful. I like to develop these systems such that the users need to opt into this paradigm where, yes, the DAO is controlling risk, or there's some risk team that's like managing it. The users opt into this. They don't get forced into this. But then you get this nice trade-off where the experts can kind of make some decisions on behalf of the users because the users themselves are not able to do, the space is extremely complicated. So finding this balance, I think, is the way to go for risk management.
I think one thing to note, though, is that rate limits are actually not like preventing something happening. It's actually just damage limitation. So if you're kind of defining your security model around rate limits, it's inherently saying, okay, it's okay for something to go wrong, but we're only allowing like 100 million to go wrong. So it's actually, I think it's part of the protection story, but it's not actually really prevention at all.
Yep, I can comment on that. So I think the DAO that is managing these rate limits, I think they should be on the hook for the any loss event. So they're the ones setting the risk parameters. So these rate limits, there may be losses from any particular bridge, but I believe it should be on the protocol itself to compensate for these losses in the event of a bad decision making with that. Yeah,
very interesting. And now, regarding transaction consistency, what are the challenges in ensuring transaction consistency in finality across different blockchain with varying confirmation? Because this is a big challenge when you set up this kind of infrastructure, if I can say that.
Yeah, I'm happy to immediately answer that. So the standard I was referring to before, the OFT standard, it leverages layer 0 within the smart contracts to communicate state between blockchains. And for OFT, it's effectively a burn and mint. But with any layer 0 integration, the application developers always maintain their block confirmations. So they can opt into recommended block confirmations, say, if you're exiting Polygon, we recommend that it's 512 block confirmations because there's a higher chance of a reorg occurring. But say if you're leaving Arbitrum, it would be much lower. However, again, if you want to price your security along this line, if you're a game and you're transacting 5-cent NFTs, maybe you actually just want the block confirmations to all be kept low and unified across every chain because the value of funds at risk are much lower. I believe, and our team believes, that configurability should always be in the hands of the developers, so that agency and ownership. And then a different example is for Stargate, built on top of layer 0. Stargate leverages an algorithm called the Delta algorithm and offers instant guaranteed fidelity. And so whatever amount you have submitted and you're transferring across chains, you are guaranteed to get that amount on the other side. Which is just, a slight deviation from your question, but an important part of the guarantees that you should have when you're moving things between chains.
Yeah, so I'll focus on more layer 2, which it's much more simpler to deal with, which is why I like it a lot more in questions of finality and stuff like that. Really, when the layer 2 does commit the transaction onto layer 1, that is and then Ethereum finalize, that is finality, and so we don't have to worry about this as much. It makes the whole thing a lot simpler. And this is why we're focused on L2s in particular, although we do want to support side chains and, well, like Polygon POS, Gnosis Chain, etc. So yeah, but there's still questions about when sequencers, they give you this soft settlement. And right now all the sequencers are completely centralized. That's actually fine. It's not, I think it sounds bad, like, oh my God, L2s are centralized. But having the sequencer centralized is actually pretty okay, as long as they're following the rules of the rollup. But you do, for more user land, building UIs and stuff like that, when the sequencer gives you that fast confirmation, it's not final in the same sense of where you're submitting something down onto the L1, but there's this trade-off between user experience and this confidence in that the transaction has been settled. So I think these are just things that just need to be dealt with by the UI developers. If the amount is not that big, if it's a gaming application or something, like, this sequencer soft confirmation is probably fine. But if you're doing some heavy-duty, whale transfers or whatever, giant loan, you'll likely want to wait for Ethereum finality. So yeah. Okay, so do you want to add something, Susanna?
I think, I agree with all these points, but I actually think part of having such a long confirmation window for optimistic rollups is kind of part of the strategy to actually keep you on the rollup, because 7 days is kind of an arbitrary length of time in reality. And if you had a fraud proving system live, if someone doesn't find a problem in let's say 3 days, why would an extra 4 days, So yeah, I think in the long term, we'll actually tend towards pretty much all roll-up systems using validity proofs. There's just kind of a cost constraint right now. But I just think that 7-day latency period is kind of in the long term not really going to be acceptable for anyone.
Yeah, thank you. Few minutes before the end, maybe we can take some questions from the audience, 1 or 2 questions. If some of you want to raise some hands. Yeah. The mic? No. I don't know if it works.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask for stablecoins, the decision process to go cross-chain, to go onto a lot of different L1s or L2s. We run a fintech that enables emerging market users and small medium businesses to use stablecoins for cross-border payments. So we're always asking, all right, so supporting this chain or listing this stablecoin or listing this chain on our platform, what's in it for our users, right? What's in it? What's the benefit for our users? And the immediate impact when we look at a stablecoin that's issued on our chains is, okay, because we need to help our users do due diligence on the stablecoin. And it convolutes the transparency immediately, right? Because then you have liability spread out more and more across different chains, different bridges, and then it makes our audit process difficult. So there is a cost to being on all these different L1s and L2s. But what's the benefit? And so I'd like to know the decision process, right? Like what makes a stablecoin decide, okay, we're going to be on one more L1 because it really benefits users in Turkey here or in Argentina?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, particularly having seen or advised or just like learned from a bunch of stablecoin projects that want to go cross-chain. I had a conversation last night with someone who's the founder of a major stablecoin project, and they were talking about how in Turkey, most of the people who use stablecoins or crypto are using USDT and are either using it on Binance or on Tron. And not many of these stablecoins that we use, maybe as, say, like, I'm looking, okay, I don't want to stereotype the audience, but I'm saying like North American and European crypto native users are not on Tron. And so let's say you're building a new stablecoin, you want to go where the users are, where there are real world use cases. And I wouldn't be thinking about it as, why does it help my current users who transact on Optimism to expand to Tron or Gnosis? It's that there are users who are already familiar there, have the native gas tokens, and wouldn't want to go get some other gas tokens and set up a new wallet just to transact with a stablecoin elsewhere. Like, that's just more friction and barriers to using your stablecoin. So it's sort of inverting it. Like, expanding to other chains should be to reach new use cases and to reach new users. And then another thing too is the old way of expanding a stablecoin would be, again, like an isolated deployment, which may take a lot of time, or having to have different like pools of liquidity someplace else, or your users are just going through third-party bridges. So now you have wrapped versions of your token. With something like the Omnichain Fungible Token Standard, it is as quick as deploying an ERC20 contract on each of these different chains. It's the same contract address and token ID, unified liquidity, since it's just mint and burn. And you can then expand to chains like Tron incredibly easily, and even app chains as well. Like, that's a whole other thing that we haven't spoken about. If there are all these different applications, games, DeFi protocols that want to build their own OP chain or Arbitrum Orbit chain, it is very unlikely that a Circle or a Tether will deploy natively on each of those smaller networks. So you need to have a really fast and quick way to do that, and you also want the horizontal composability. So moving the stablecoin between L2s or different rollups.
Yeah, I think that was a perfect answer for why, like us at Spark, for example, are looking at expanding multi-chain, because the gas fees are just high. We want users to be able to use the tokens and have first-class support for DAI. But I have an addition to this. So from your perspective, you're asking, if I heard you correctly, like, why should I integrate this into my platform? Why should I integrate DAI specifically?
What's in it for our user base?
Yeah. So for DAI specifically, I would say this is the DAI savings rate. So we have tokenized this. It's called Savings DAI. This is a 5% yield on top of the US dollar currency that you have. So we're looking at bridging this multi-chain as well, so users can have this intrinsic yield while they're transacting in DeFi. So this is a huge competitive advantage for DAI, in my opinion.
That's okay. Another question? This is the end. Thank you very much. Thank you.